times in a week do you order takeout? How does it come packaged? Have you given it any thought? And if you, like me, feel guilty about all the styrofoam and the plastic, if you feel you want to leave your children a better earth, it is time to do something about it, isn't it? Hello, I'm Tej, and I host Chizuba Talks, a podcast dedicated to sharing compelling stories of hope, determination, and good work. Let us find out how one organization is providing solutions for this grave issue that we call plastic. Meet John Meyer, the executive director of Plastic Free Restaurants. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. John Mayer split his 20s between a Washington, D.C. political media consulting firm and a touring rock band. And then spent his 30s acting in and producing TV shows and films in Los Angeles. Now he's raising two toddlers and attempting to leave a better place for them by volunteering as the executive director of a nonprofit that eliminates single use plastic from schools and restaurants by subsidizing the purchase of reusable replacements. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, acting and then now making sure that restaurants are not using plastic. How different is that?
It's a bit of a jump. I have not abandoned acting altogether, although I have abandoned producing. Yeah, I still act when they'll hire me, when they'll let me. But yeah, this is a very very different animal. I've always been pretty passionate about plastic. I've always had a bit of a visceral reaction to it, and I spent 40 plus years of my life not doing much about it, and finally saw an opening and went for it.
Yeah. So this is something that is the need of the hour, and everybody says they need to do something about plastic. What got you into starting this initiative?
The single spark for it was walking into a friend's burrito shop. He'd just opened a small little takeout counter place, and I wanted to go support and buy a burrito from him. And on the wall behind him was all of his takeout stuff, and half of it was plastic and half of it was plant based, quote unquote, compostable.
Hmm.
And at the time, I really didn't understand many of the vagaries about compostable foodware. I really didn't understand how fraught a landscape it is, which it is. It's really not a solution. At the time, my brain just went plastic bad, plant good. And I asked him why half and half. And he said, well, it's the price difference. You know, the compostable stuff is more expensive. And I said, how much more expensive? He handed me a folder of invoices and I took a look through it. And it was basically a $300 difference per month, 350 bucks,
Okay.
which, to a restaurant trying to find its feet is not an insubstantial amount of money. But at the end of the day, especially by Los Angeles, cost of living standards, to think that you could eliminate thousands of pieces of plastic from the waste stream every month from a single restaurant for 300 bucks just seemed like we should be doing something about this. And so I tried to find a way to scale it up and make it attractive, and ultimately landed on tax exempt status within the federal government, which is sort of a fancy way of saying it's a nonprofit, which people can deduct donations to. People can deduct from their taxes from
Yes.
having donated to our
Yeah.
cause.
Lovely.
So just trying to make it as attractive as possible. So that's how I got into it. But I mean, more backstory than that is simply, some people take their kids to soup kitchens to volunteer when they're growing up. My parents took me to a recycling center.
Okay.
That was my early childhood
Uh-huh.
volunteering experience, was
Uh-huh.
sorting bottles and crushing cans and stuff.
Wow. So to come to this decision that something needs to be done about the plastic is the very fact that you want to do something about it, and the fact that you want to take steps so that it is incorporated into the system, that itself is must be a challenging task, isn't it?
Sure, and what we started off as 2.5 years ago is bears almost no resemblance to where we are today. We definitely made some missteps early on, and we course corrected pretty quickly. But I guess another thing that sort of led to the actual doing of this idea was a little bit of frustration with a lot of the environmental charities that I was donating a little bit of money to prior to starting this one, because it felt as though a lot of them, I was having a hard time understanding what exactly my money was going toward. what exactly they were spending the money on. Some of them, it's very obvious. Some of them have very clear missions and very clear outcomes. Some of them are just sort of nebulous, we want to educate people about the planet. And I'm just like, I don't know what that means. I don't know where my money's going, except maybe to somebody's salary. So that was a bit of a frustration too. And then of course, on top of that, the frustration with governments that just are not taking this issue seriously, especially in the United States.
Yes.
Local, state, federal, across the board.
Right. To date, I just looked up your website. Your subsidies have eliminated more than 8 million single-use plastic foodware items from the waste stream.
Yep.
That is quite a number.
It sounds really impressive, and I'm proud of it, but it represents subsidies having gone out to truly just 96 places now, which I think the website might be a couple weeks behind, but that's only 96 schools and restaurants that we've subsidized, and that has equaled nearly 9 million pieces of plastic.
Well,
when you think about it's a start, no, for sure. And again, it's something we're proud of, but there are nearly 1 million restaurants in the United States. There are 98,000 public schools in the United States.
Yes.
What we have done is truly not even the proverbial drop in the bucket. It's
right.
You got to start somewhere, and I'm proud of 9 million. It's 9 million fewer plastic items than were in the waste stream, without us being here. But we got a long ways to go.
Right. Tell me, John, do you ensure that the restaurant is completely 100% plastic free, or is that a difficult task?
It's a very difficult task to get restaurants 100% plastic free, in no small part because of takeout and delivery. They are much tougher nuts to crack. And so to a certain degree, we go after the low-hanging fruit, at least for now. We would rather take some element or some percentage of the plastic out of the waste stream than forget about a restaurant altogether, because they can't go 100%. So we don't require 100% plastic-free from the subsidy recipients, for the recipients of the subsidies we give out. Takeout and delivery is being tackled in a number of cities around the United States and around the world, I know, by a variety of upstart companies that are doing quote unquote plastic free or zero waste delivery for dozens or hundreds of restaurants at a time. And we've also tried to partner with some of those and subsidize their efforts, thus far without a heck of a lot of success in terms of making the matches work. But they're doing great work, and we very much support that.
Right. Now, getting restaurants to go 100%, plastic free, and ensuring that there is. So, did you face any kind of opposition or challenge over there? Asking people, what is the initial reaction when you approach a restaurant?
So, when I started this organization 2.5 years ago, my impression was that the single biggest hurdle was the cost of the reusable items, and that if you could eliminate the cost factor, the cost problem, then you would essentially make this a no-brainer, that people would just fall in line. And of course, it's better to use this. And why wouldn't we if we didn't have to pay more money for it? That was wrong. There are two other hurdles that are bigger. One of them is lack of dishwasher infrastructure, which is not universal. Some restaurants and schools have dishwashing infrastructure. Some of them don't. So the ones that do, that's not a hurdle. But the ones that don't, it can be a massive hurdle, because those dishwashers and the upgrades to kitchens that they require can cost sometimes 10 times, 20 times what the reusable foodware costs.
Yeah.
We might spend $3,000 on a subsidy for a school, and they're going to need to spend $40,000 to install a dishwasher and upgrade the electrical panel and put in a new grease trap, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a big hurdle. But the single biggest hurdle for everyone, it seems, or almost everyone, is change, is fear of change. This is how we've done things for 6 months. This is how we've done things since the beginning of the pandemic. This is how we've done things since we opened 30 years ago. Whatever the calculus is, if I do this, if I go reusable, then I have to retrain my staff, and I have to change my kitchen layout, and I have to change my inventory procedures. And what if it doesn't work? And it's fear of change. That's really the biggest hurdle. So there's a lot of hand-holding, and a lot of psychology that goes into, flipping restaurants and schools.
Mm-hmm. True, I understand.
Let's take a break to understand what Juzuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state of the art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chizuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chizuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chizuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chizuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest.
But when you say that this is what the benefits are, it provides a kind of an example to the students that you are doing something on behalf of the schools. I'm sure that can be, of course, in the US, there is no fee system, right? You cannot tax the parents for the cost.
Tax the parents for the cost of the disposable foodware.
Yes, or basically just take the cost from the parents. Not done.
Oh, you mean the cost of the reusable foodware? You mean the cost of? Mm, it would be difficult to do that in any kind of equitable fashion. I think. I mean, it's not even something we've tried. We're working on partnerships with, for example, a dishwashing manufacturer to cut back on the costs that a school would face if they had to install a dishwasher, and then we're there to essentially remove the cost burden altogether when it comes to
Hmm.
purchasing the
Hmm.
items, the
Hmm.
reusable foodware. We have a few limits and a few caps, but for the most part, with nonprofits and schools, we cover everything. We buy the stuff outright. So that removes a lot of the cost equation. And we have dozens of case studies that we can point to from a partner nonprofit of ours, Rethink Disposable, which show that restaurant after restaurant after restaurant, and in three cases, school after school after school, saves money after implementing adopting reusable foodware, even after factoring in increased labor costs, increased electricity usage, increased water usage, in some cases, additional expenses for dishwasher infrastructure. They
Oh,
will save money in the long run every single time.
okay. So you've done the economics and you present that to.
I have not personally. We've got
You've
links
got
to all of
yes.
these case studies on our website. We don't have the depth of personnel to be able to execute those on our own. But yes, there's an organization in the States here called Rethink Disposable. It's been around for 13 or 14 years. It's an offshoot of the Clean Water Fund.
Right.
And they do a lot of the same work that we do, but they do it on a much deeper level as far as data and analysis and follow through. And
Hmm.
we're largely recruiting schools and writing checks. They're doing a lot of the boots on the ground data analysis and study.
Oh, nice, nice.
So they're great. They're fantastic. And without them, we would not have gotten to 9 million at this point. We
Yeah, absolutely.
we'd be quite a bit behind where we are.
It's a start, and I wish this would spread to more countries, not only the United States, but of course to other countries as well, where plastic is such a huge thing. I recently visited Japan, and I saw the amount of plastic that they're using. I'm sure there's a recycling unit in place. I'm sure there's a system in place, but still, to have plastic, so much plastic coming out of a system, country is I don't know how they're dealing with the problem.
The more I've read and the more I've learned, the less sure I am that there is such a system in place. The less faith I have in exactly what you just said. I think in
Right.
a lot of cases, it's actually no, it's just getting thrown out. It's just going to incinerators and
Right.
landfills.
I'm sure. Yeah. John, how do you envision this program evolving in the future? And do you have any goals for your impact?
Yes, well, the long-term goal is to make ourselves irrelevant, and obviously we would need governments to play along in that because we can't do it entirely on our own. But my goal is to someday be able to close our doors because we're no longer necessary. Is for us to see at least a United States, if not a world, where single-use plastic is just not used for food. It just doesn't need to be, and it shouldn't be. we need to find our way into a circular economy. But more short term or medium term or perhaps slightly more realistic goals, yeah, we're trying to expand into healthcare areas, hospitals and healthcare facilities, into event spaces. We just, with a manufacturer here in the U.S., developed a pitch to make to a couple of professional sports arenas to try to get them to go, completely reusable. And we're also just trying to increase our fundraising, increase our impact, increase our visibility.
Mm,
We're operating on a shoestring. We don't pay any salaries. We don't pay any rent.
yes.
So it's a challenge, but we also just got a whole bunch of pro bono business consulting from a fairly established firm, and they had a lot of amazing recommendations to make, to just make us more efficient, make us more streamlined, and achieve more impact for the amount of work that we're putting into it.
I'm sure. I wish you luck with that. And just thinking off the top of my head, wondering whether you could collaborate with universities to make sure. So there are a lot of these studies that are going on how to recycle plastic or make it into a biofuel or make it into some kind of this thing. So do you also look at some prospect like that?
We've certainly had conversations with a lot of companies and upstarts that are doing that kind of thing, but it's not really a space that we're getting into. For one thing, our primary purpose is to keep the stuff from being made in the first place. So we're not really looking at end of cycle issues. We're looking at, let's not have the cycle at all.
Right.
Let's eliminate the plastic from the equation altogether, as opposed to clean up or figuring out what to do with it other than burn or bury. So yes, we're certainly in touch with a lot of those companies and aware of them, but we're not really working hand in glove with them because it's kind of outside of our
All
scope.
right. All right. If in my course of interviewing people with this podcast, if I come across somebody who is into some kind of plastic recycling or something, maybe I'll put you in touch with them.
Yeah, please, of course.
That would be wonderful. Super. John, would you like to share your social handles here?
Yeah, please. We're primarily on Instagram and Facebook, and it's just Plastic Free Restaurants in both cases, at Plastic Free Restaurants. We have a Twitter account, we have a LinkedIn account. I'm determined to start using them more than I have been thus far, but
You will, don't worry.
um, and I believe they're both the same handles. I think they're both just at Plastic Free Restaurants, but we're mostly Instagram and Facebook as of now.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
The National Geographic Society estimates that only about 9% of all plastic ever made has likely been recycled.
Correct.
We are now producing nearly 400 million tons of plastic every year, half of which is for single use. And this is the statistics that I just took off the internet. Worldwide, the amount of single use plastic manufactured every year is increasing, and plastic debris causes deaths of more than a million seabirds and more than a lakh marine animals every year. So, John, I think you are doing great work. I wish you more momentum to your program, and I wish you luck with all the goals that you are keeping for your organization.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I love the fact that on your website you have this feedback and suggestions page. That I would request everybody who's listening to this to do visit plasticfreerestaurants.org and find out how you can help.
Yeah, please. I mean, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people to join us on the mission. So, yeah, that would be
Lovely.
fantastic. Thank you.
Wish you luck. Goodbye.
Thanks. Goodbye.